Well, welcome back to the Revealed Report. I'm glad you decided to join me. I'm trying to wipe sweat off my face. I was trying to figure out where these headsets were. Well, earlier today, I had a little bit of medical stuff I had to take care of. And so I must confess, with all of that, I kind of feel a little half mentally handicapped. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there saying, well, what's the difference than normal? But we don't listen to them anyhow, regardless if they're right. But I'm glad to be back with you on air. Well, it is continuation of government shutdown, and I received a letter from the Illinois, from somebody who received a letter from the Illinois Department, DHS, IDHS, Illinois Department of Health and Services. Rush Limbaugh would have said, in between my formerly nicotine-stained fingers. Important SNAP update, and I quote, the Trump administration is stopping SNAP food stamps funding for 42 million Americans during the federal government shutdown, end quote. Well, they're liars, because what they will not tell you is it's not the GOP and it's not Donald Trump that is stopping SNAP. It's not them that's continuing the government shutdown. This is exactly what the radical left always does. They flip the script. They act like the innocent ones that's actually caring for the people, when it's actually the radical left that's been fighting against the GOP and against Donald Trump, because they want to hold the American taxpayer hostage, and they want to keep the American budget at hostage, because they want to fund a broken healthcare system called affordable healthcare, and they want to blow out the budget, giving trillions of dollars even to illegals that just infiltrate our system, and they don't even assimilate to our traditions and what we believe in. They try to uproot the system by allowing people to assimilate, to infiltrate the United States of America without assimilating to the very traditions, to the founding principles of America. This is their whole idea of trying to flip the nation upside down and inside out. Now, some people call it the Great Replacement Theory. I don't call it that. I call it overwhelm the system, saturate the system, flood it with all types of different ideas, which goes right into their postmodern idea that you can have your truth, I can have my truth. Unless your truth is the word of God, unless your truth is America's founding principles, then you're not allowed to have that. So what they want to do is oversaturate the United States of America with people that don't even believe in the founding principles of our nation, so that they can begin to change the very system from inside out, because they know that you can't just overthrow the United States of America very easily. So what you have to do is you have to change the voters. And how do you do that? Just allow them to infiltrate into our nation without assimilating to our principles, bring in their ideas without any conversion, and then begin to vote that way, because the radical left begins to resemble the third world countries that they came from. That's why many of them, without assimilating, vote for these radical Democrats, because these radical Democrats have the same ideas that these people were fleeing from. They come to the greatest country in the world, the country with the greatest levels of freedom, with the American dream, where you can make something out of yourself if you work hard, if you apply yourself, and especially if you seek God first. So we find that the Democrat Party is lying, and especially in the state of Illinois, that's where I'm at. This is close to home, but we don't expect anything different from the radical leftist politicians and the unelected bureaucrats that work for them. So this is the messaging of the radical left. But yet, if you ask John Fetterman, he'll tell you where the blame is at. And let's go ahead and play that clip.
How is this going to end? Are there any new signs this week that one of the political parties might blink? Joining us now is Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman. He's one of 3 Senate Democrats who has been voting with Republicans to continue to fund the government. Senator, thanks for joining us. So, as you know, 42 million Americans, including 2 million Pennsylvanians, will not receive food stamp or SNAP benefits this month because funding officially lapsed yesterday. The White House says this is the fault of Democrats for shutting down the government. Democrats note that the Trump administration is not dipping into the contingency funds for SNAP, and they think that Trump is doing that to pressure Democrats. How do you see it? Who do you blame for this?
Well, I mean, for me, fundamentally, I'm deeply distressing to know that 42 million Americans are going to lose their SNAP benefits. And now that's one of the big reasons why I refuse to shutting our government down. And again, I feel like the Democrats really need to own the shutdown. I mean, we're shutting it down. I know why they claim, because they want to address the tax credits, and I fully support that. I voted for all of their RCRs, every single time, and I refuse to put 42 million Americans in the kinds of food insecurity. Now,
So even John Fetterman has this right. He understands that the Democrats need to own this. It is Chucky Schumer who is afraid of AOC and the radical left because they're probably going to primary him in the midterms. So he understands that he must bow to the radical left, willing to sell his soul to the radical left because the radical left wants to blow out the budget year after year after year, which is exactly what our founders did not want. General George Washington became the first president of the United States, talked about it. John Adams talked about it. Thomas Jefferson talked about it. Alexander Hamilton and them talked about it. They knew that debt is slavery. And after they fought the American Revolutionary War, they were in debt, and they understood the value of getting out of debt because they knew that when you're at debt, you're selling out the future generations and you're exposing yourself to weakness against domestic and foreign threats because you don't have the ability at some point to be able to financially fight off those threats. So they understood that debt is slavery. Debt is the death of a nation. And there is an economic law usually in history when the service to debt goes beyond your national defense budget. Usually that's the death spiral economically. There are countries and nations in the past that died within because of that. And the United States went beyond that. And now we're riding by the grace of God. Now, we should ask the question, should 42 million people in the United States of America be on SNAP benefits? I'm not against helping the poor. I believe in helping the poor. As a matter of fact, I believe that when you give to the poor, you lend to the Lord. However, I also believe in accountability. It was John Adams that quoted the Bible and said, man shall work 6 days, and one day he gets the rest. They believe in a hard work ethic. They believe that if you were going to give people anything, you had to hold them to accountability, and they had to be able to show themselves to have a work ethic. Now, I understand that there's people who have bad situations, bad medical situations in that. However, I don't believe that we should be spending so much money for 42 million Americans to be on SNAP benefits. I believe we should create a society where people don't need the government to take care of them from cradle to grave. And we should reserve that safety net for people who really do need it, not people that want to sit at home, smoke marijuana, sit on their beanbag chair, play Xbox while maybe their wife is working, and they don't want to take care of their own family. If you believe in the Bible, this is one of the reasons radical left doesn't have a problem with dependency, because they don't believe in the Bible. But the Bible tells us if a man doesn't work, he ought not to eat. And if you do not provide for your own, you're worse than an infidel and have denied the faith. The Bible teaches to make yourself better, to strive for mastery, to go beyond, to become something great, to work hard. It teaches a hard work ethic. The word work is all throughout Scripture. But yet the radical left, the reason why they want you to be dependent upon the government is exactly why LBJ created the Great Society. He wanted to buy votes. At that time, the black community, they voted predominantly for the Republican Party, but LBJ came in and he started to break up the black family, which was more tightly knit together than the white community family. He went in there, he busted up the family. He began to incentivize women to have children out of wedlock so that they can get government aid, because they wanted to buy votes by making you dependent upon the government. So I believe, on one hand, it is very bad. I don't want people starving either. On the other hand, I think it is a sign to America that we must slim down the Leviathan. Now, I don't believe you do that all at one time. I believe you have to do that through a process, because if you have some kind of sickness and you're on medication, there is some medication you can't just stop. I used to have to take prednisone, a steroid, and they warned me that you can't just automatically come off prednisone. You must wean off of it, because if you don't, it's going to cause other problems. I believe we have to wean people off of all the government aid. I believe that it should be limited help for people who really do need it, not to incentivize laziness, not to incentivize a lack of a work ethic, and most certainly not to incentivize people to flood into our nation illegally and get all types of benefits. That is something we should not be supporting. This is why I'm not a radical leftist. I am a conservative that does have a compassionate heart, but the problem is the Conservative Party, for the most part, failed on their They failed on their messaging. They allowed the radical left to paint the picture that we are unloving, uncaring, and we're intolerant, and we have no compassion. But that's not the truth. We are the ones that really do have compassion for the poor. We want to set up a system that people can rise above. And yet we have a safety net that helps people who truly do need it. The radical left, on the other hand, they set up a system of oppressors and oppressed and tell you that you can never rise above. But don't you worry, we're going to take care of you from cradle to grave. Just vote for us in the midterms and vote for us in 2028, and we'll make sure that you're taken care of. And what's the end result? They bankrupt our future. They cause a great deficit of our budget in the future and make it very, very difficult for people to rise above. And they tax us to death because they feel like if they redistribute enough wealth, then they won't have any more problems anymore. So we find that they are trying to sell this, that Trump is the cause of the shutdown. No, he is not. No, the GOP is not. It is the radical left that refuses to open up the government because they want to use it as leverage, to quote their very words, use the American taxpayer as and the hurt of the American people as leverage to blow out the future of our budget, to make us more and more trillions of dollars in debt. It's President Trump that ran on the promise that he was going to end affordable health care and he was going to end all this public aid that is going to illegal migration into our country. And he's keeping his promise. That was one of the reasons we voted for him. So for anybody who is turning their back on Trump now, you voted for that. That was one of the things you voted for. So now we need to stand with him. But this is how the left operates. And how they operate is they will take a bad situation and they begin to focus all on that bad situation to play on the emotions of people. There will always be bad situations. However, you can't let a small percentage of bad situations cause you to uproot the whole system. What they do is they'll take out a few people in a very, very tragic situation. They'll hyper focus on that. And then they'll begin to paint the picture that we can't do these things that's going to save our country because of this bad situation. Play on your emotions, and they appeal to that. So then you begin to back up and say, no, this is harsh. We shouldn't do this. And by not doing it, then what we do is we destroy the future of America altogether. And we keep drowning in greater and greater debt, living more paycheck to paycheck without the ability to have the American dream. That's how the radical left operates. And you have to understand the only reason they appeal to your emotions because they don't have enough facts, data, and truth to be able to stand to argue against us. And as a matter of fact, they have to lie to their own people. They won't just come out and tell you exactly what they believe because they know the predominant majority of the general public doesn't want the radicalized ideas. So what do? They deceive the people. It's very, very disappointing. It's very, very offensive as far as I'm concerned to think that the American people are that stupid that they don't get it. And you can tell there was a red wave that voted for Trump. All the swing states voted for Trump. And it wasn't because all of them believed in Trump. It's because they were lying to the general public and the American people woke up to it. And so here on this network, we're going to keep exposing lies. For anybody out there in the state of Illinois that got one of these letters, they are liars. It is not Trump stopping SNAP. It is Chucky Schumer. It's AOC. It's the radical left that is stopping you from getting your benefits. But my prayer is twofold. They get this worked out because I do want people to be helped. But number two, we got to figure out how to get 42 million people, that number slimmed down somehow, some way. We can't afford just to give out free stuff year after year after year. See, FDR lied to the people. He said that he was going to create Social Security and he was going to create all these things, and your money was going to go into a secret lockbox, not to be touched, and it was going to gain interest. It was going to take care of your retirement. It was going to take care of your health and all of these things. They spent it. They blew that money. And year after year, we just keep racking up a debt with government programs that are on autopilot. They are on autopilot. We must do something. I've been saying the whole entire time that President Trump needs to figure out what is the absolute essential services. What are those essential services? And slim off the fat, get us down to just those essential services so that we do have a safety net that does help genuinely hurting people, but it doesn't blow out the budget to incentivize laziness or to incentivize a lack of work ethic. Now, it's funny to me because the radical left tend to lean towards the Fabian ideology. When Barack Hussein Obama was in office as the president of the United States, he had somebody in his cabinet that believed in the very George Bernard Shaw idea that if you're not pulling the weight for the collective good, then maybe we shouldn't be using the resources of our medical resources and the money for medical resources on people that could not pull for the collective majority's good. So they thought at the age of 75 and older, we should start slimming down the medical attention that you get, quit spending as much money to serve you medically because you are no longer working as hard and pulling for the collective good. They also had no problem with aborting babies because babies aren't pulling their weight for the collective good. They're dependent upon their parents. Also, there are some that have gone so extreme that have stated that if you have a mental handicap or retardation or any of those things, that then you should not be getting as much medical attention because you're not pulling for the collective good. These are the same ones that don't have a problem coming by and offering medicated suicidal death to people. You see, they care about the collective rather than the individual. There is no balance in between. And the individual only has worth and value to them as long as it fits into the agenda of the collective ideology. And the moment that you do not have worth towards the collective ideology, they have no problem expensing you away. And that's what we want to run our medical healthcare. That's what we want socialistic healthcare by the same people that says if you're 75 and older, we shouldn't be using as much of our financial resources to take care of you. That's their way of slimming down the very money expense of the health industry, the blowing out the budget. And they say, well, we can slim it down because when you're 80 years old, we're not going to take care of grandpa and grandma. And then they want to turn around and demonize the GOP and say that we're selling out the elderly because we want to get rid of Social Security, which is a bold-faced lie. It's one lie after another lie. It's one form of deception after another form of deception. That's why I don't want them running our healthcare system. That's why I don't want their socialized healthcare system. I understand that we do have problems with the healthcare industry, but the solution is not socialized healthcare. If that was the case, why is wealthy people in Canada and these other countries coming into the United States of America to get medical treatment by a system that is broken, but it's still better than all of this socialistic healthcare ideology? So no, I don't trust them to run our healthcare. I don't want them dictating to me. And just remember, if they're not liars, anybody remember if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor? Or have we forgot about those lies from Barack Hussein? So it's not the GOP that is trying to hurt the American people. It is the radical left that wants to use you as a hostage situation. They got a metaphorical gun to your head and they're telling the GOP that we are not going to let go and we're not scared to pull the trigger unless you give us everything we want. And what we want is for you to bankrupt our nation, hand the cash over to us so we can redistribute it for the dumbest programs ever known in human history, or else we're not letting go of the person we're holding. And that person they're holding the gun to the head just happens to be the hardworking American people and the people that does need genuine help from the government or from others. And so this is how the left operates. And they take one bad situation, they hyper focus on it, play on your emotions, and get you to buy into it at the very depth of our nation's future. This is the left holding the American taxpayer hostage to fund their broken healthcare system and give free healthcare to illegal immigrants. This is the trickery of the left, and we must not allow it. Now, I will say the GOP can end it right now too. They could take the nuclear option, which means to get rid of the they could take the nuclear option and they can get, man, that medicine's working on me pretty good. They can get rid of the filibuster. I'm sorry. They could get rid of the filibuster. They can begin to use the nuclear option, get rid of that. And it takes a simple majority and they could pass this right now and they can reopen the government and move on and take care of the situation. And Trump was urging them to do that because Trump was telling them that the Democrats are going to do it regardless. When they get back in office, if they get the opportunity, they'll do it so they can pack the court the courts. They can add Puerto Rico and others into being states so they can have an endless rule and reign. They wanted to do it as well. They didn't have the power and the ability to do it at the time, but they wanted to do it. And Trump is saying, you let them get back in office, they will do it in a heartbeat. So instead of losing with dignity and honor, just take the nuclear option. We are in a political, spiritual, and ideological war. Trump is the only president in my lifetime that gets it. I've been screaming it. I've been saying it for many, many years right now, that the old way of fighting this out is done, because we have to realize we are not dealing with old school Democrats. We are dealing with people that hate our country and want to uproot the system. They hate our God. They hate the Bible. They hate the founding principles of America. They want to uproot the system. They want to infiltrate it without assimilation so that they can drown it out and kill the American dream, kill the American traditions, kill capitalism, kill in God we trust. And so we must approach it as a spiritual and ideological war field, a political war field. And Trump is the first president that understands that. And he also understands we cannot be intimidated by what they say. We cannot be intimidated by these lying letters from IDHS and other states that just want to lie to you about the president of the United States and the GOP. We must be willing to stand up against that, not worried about what the mainstream media is saying anymore, because their ratings are tanking day after day. And thank God the President Trump that's been calling them out. So anybody who didn't like his brass tacks way of going after the mainstream media, it was very effective. It worked. It broke that all up. It was a hand grenade on all of their lies, and it began to turn the people away from the mainstream media, so they couldn't keep pushing the narrative. Now what they'll do is they'll package it in little letters like this and send it out house to house to house to house. Anybody who is on SNAP benefits. Somebody put this on my desk because they knew when I read it, they knew exactly what I was going to do. So, and I only know who put it on my desk, but thank you to whoever put that on my desk and give me the material to talk about with that. So the GOP could end the shutdown with the nuclear option. Trump is pushing on them to do such. I agree with Trump. I think they should. I think Trump allowed it to go out. The GOP allowed it to go out. They called the radical left on it. I think they should just use the nuclear option, go out there and tell the American people, you know what? We didn't really want to get rid of filibuster. We really didn't want to take the nuclear option. They left us no choice. We're going to take care of you when they won't. We're going to feed your families when they won't. We're going to make sure that airlines are running when they won't. And I think that's how they should go out there. And that I think that's how they should sell it to the people. And I think that's what they should do. But the GOP is not doing it. And I kind of understand that they want to make sure that they maintain something because they're worried that if the radical left gets in, then they're going to use it too, and it's going to be more destructive. I understand that. However, I also understand that they're going to do it if they get the opportunity anyways. I know we shouldn't probably make it easier for them, but at what point do we begin to say we can't play by the old rule book anymore? We must fight this out and we must win. And so Trump is putting pressure on both the left and the right, the GOP. And I think it's great because I think that pressure is either going to bring some I think there's going to be Democrats that do come to the table. I think there's Democrats that realize for the first time ever, there's a Republican president and there's a GOP that is not bowing anymore. I pray that the GOP holds out. There's pressure on both sides, and there's some, it was designed for gridlocking in our nation for some of this to be battled out for the benefit of the people. So I know if we go tomorrow, it's going to be the longest shutdown in American history. On one hand, I absolutely hate it. On the other hand, I think it can bring some good for our nation. And so I think for the first time ever, it's going to be the President Trump and the GOP. And I pray they don't make me look foolish, but I believe for the first time ever, it's going to be the Republicans that are actually making the Democrats bend the knee. The radicals won't, but I think there's enough that understands how dangerous this is for both sides, and they're going to come to the negotiation table. And I think it's great. I think that part's great. Now, in addition to that, we, of course, have Democrats that are losing their ever-loving minds over ICE agents and especially over troops being sent to cities like Portland or Chicago. But let me tell you, the left has allowed endless amounts of infiltration without assimilation. We can't continue to allow that. Trump ran on closing our border and beginning to crack down on this because with an open border, we can have another 9/11. With an open border, we have fentanyl pouring over. With an open border, we have Laken Riley situations that was brutally attacked and murdered. Not everybody coming into our country is murderers. Not everybody coming into our country is demonic monsters, but you can't allow MS-13 to come in. You can't allow these gangs to come in. You can't allow endless amounts of drugs to come in. Fentanyl, a very dangerous drug. You can't allow young Chinese military men camped south of the border and have an opportunity to come in and begin to create splinter cells inside of our own nation. You can't have people that come from other countries that hate our country flood into our country, not assimilate to our country, and either want to uproot or cause domestic terrorist attacks. And so there has to be something done. Yes, there are bad situations, and that's what the radical left does. They pick out some bad situations where maybe an ICE agent acted out in a way he shouldn't have, or maybe a military troop acted in a way he shouldn't have or she shouldn't have. There's always going to be a bad apple in the crowd. But what the radical left does, they use one of those bad examples, they hyper focus on that. So you begin to have your emotions played on, it appeals to you, and you say, no, I don't agree with that. And by not agreeing with it, then you begin to back up on your support to President Trump and their crackdown on border control and getting illegal activity out of our nation. You begin to back up on that. You begin to soften up on that. And then you begin to question whether President Trump should be doing this. And then you quit supporting it altogether. And the end result of that is more illegal migration into our nation without assimilation, and eventually the overthrow of our country from within. So yes, there's always going to be bad situations, but the overall cause is right. And so you must examine that. And you must outweigh that. You can say, no, I don't believe in that action, but I do believe we cannot have open borders. I do believe we got to crack down on illegal migration into our country. And so something must be done. ICE agents must begin to fix this problem. We need ICE agents getting it resolved. Yes, there's always going to be some that do wrong things. They did this with the George Floyd case. Remember when they lied about the George Floyd death? Keith Ellis hid the very first tape, said it's too shocking for the general public to see it, which was only George Floyd saying, I can't breathe, while he was in the back seat of the police vehicle. He was set down by the police officer. That was the tape then you see, not the first tape. They began to sell you a half truth. They didn't sell you the full truth. They began to lie about the case, and then they began to hyper focus on it, and they began to demonize all the police officers. So then they began to push defund the police, and now they didn't want police officers. They wanted some kind of socialistic ideology from radical leftists that's somehow going to go in there and give you a good talk, and you're not going to want to rob and murder people anymore. How did they do it? They hyper focused on some bad examples. In that case, they even lied about it, but they'll hyper focus on any bad example that they can use so that they can begin to demonize all of the agents, all of the police officers, all of the troops, and then play on your emotions. So you begin to side with defund the police, get rid of the ICE agents, get rid of the troops trying to crack down on lawlessness in our cities. And that's how they play. They play on the emotions. They hyper focus on bad examples. They do this with Israel. They'll hyper focus on something Israel does wrong so that they begin to make you demonize Israel altogether until you're siding with Hamas that says from the river to the sea, death to Israel and death to America. That's how they play this game. And we must reject it. We can say, yeah, that action wasn't right, but I still stand for what they're doing. I still support what they're doing. So the radical left will use bad situations to try to trick you, and you must not be tricked. You got to be wise enough not to be tricked by the radical left. They also will tell you that Trump is just, this is the Gestapo. He's rounding up everybody that's not white, and surely he's going to take them. I even seen this on social media. He's taking them to concentration camps, just like Hitler. These people are either the most dumbest people on the face of the earth, or they're just the most habitual liars that have no conscience whatsoever, that will just lie again. This is not the Gestapo. This is the crackdown on illegal infiltration of our country without assimilation to uproot the system. And it is an insurrection. That is exactly what it is. It is a welled out, strategic, planned out insurrection to destroy our nation, to uproot what they feel is the plantation that is racist, that is evil, that is bigoted, that they believe that it was built on white supremacy. So it needs to be uproot from within. They have a top-down, bottom-up approach. Heat things up in the street, get lying politicians in place so that you begin to buy into those that claim they're going to bring the answers to you. So you begin to flip the system inside out and upside down. It's a well-planned out insurrection. And they will also be an outright rebellion against federal law. So for all of the radical leftist Democrats like J.B. Pritzker, who either is the dumbest person in politics or he's a great liar and he's not even all that great at it, he's just good at doing it all the time, that claims that this is illegal. It's illegal to use troops to go into, it's unconstitutional to use troops to go in on American citizens. Well, first of all, they don't understand the spirit of the Constitution. Because to truly understand a law, you have to also understand the spirit of the law. To truly understand the Constitution, you have to understand the spirit of the Constitution. When I say that, I don't mean an ontological spirit like God the Spirit. I'm talking about the very element that caused the Constitution to be developed. You understand that after the Declaration of Independence in 1776 and before the establishing of the Constitution in 1787, you have to understand that there was only colonies, these loose colonies, and there was not a unification to them of a federal government. Now, what our founders wanted is they wanted a strong, limited government. They were very wise. They wanted to create it so you couldn't just overthrow the system easily, but they also wanted a system that was not a tyrannical system. It was a republic. It was a government ran by the people for the people. One of the reasons, they had several reasons. They had interstate commerce issues that they needed to resolve, so they needed a federal government. They had a concern that if there was a foreign invader that came across, that they would not be able to simulate and they would not be able to tax the people to fund that war and fight off the invasion that would come in. So they needed a federal government for that. But also another reason why they needed a federal government is because within the states at that time, within these colonies, there was uprisings, there was attempted insurrections, there was rebellion that was taking place. And sometimes those states had a hard time getting it under control. So part of the Constitution was established so that the federal government could step in and help those states get the lawlessness under control so that those uprisings would not turn to try to overthrow the American system. And if there was outright rebellion from any of these officials in these colonies and these states that was allowing that, then they could also step in and they can get involved to make it stop. This would also be the principles that would pave the way for the Insurrection Act. The Insurrection Act is to stop insurrection. It is also to step in with the military troops, the federal troops, into these states to begin to exercise their authority, even on United States citizens, even on those that are in the United States. And many of these are not even United States citizens, so that insurrection wouldn't rise up, so that outright rebellion would not be taking place, and so that extreme lawlessness would be taken care of. So when you have J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, when you have Portland, Oregon's mayor, you have the mayor of Chicago that is an outright rebellion supporting those that do want insurrection to our nation and those that are allowing lawlessness to run rampant in the streets. The very Constitution spirit behind it was for that very purpose, as well as other purposes, to get that under control. So for all the radical left that wants to tell you it's not constitutional, they are all liars, or they don't know the American history. They don't know the Constitution. And therefore, if they don't know the Constitution, or if they're liars, they don't deserve to be politicians in our nation. And if you're in one of those states, you need to get them out of powerful positions. Vote them out. And so now they want to lie to the low information voter and try to tell you that it's unconstitutional for Trump to be doing these things. Not only is Trump trying to crack down on that, he's trying to crack down on the very drugs that are coming into our nation. And what does the radical left do? They support the drug dealers over the very one that's stopping drugs from flowing into our country. It's very simple. Let me break it down. It's this simple. Either you vote for Trump and the GOP that loves the founding of America, or you vote for those that want to uproot the American system. You vote for those that are trying to come back to a constitutional republic, or you vote for those that want to uproot the Constitution. You vote for those that love the traditions of America, like 4th of July, or you vote for those that want to change July 4th into Juneteenth. You vote for those that believe that America's history should be protected, or you vote for those that want to cancel America's history, demonize America's history, deface statues and monuments, and begin to tear that all out. It's that easy. Do you want to vote for those that love America? Then vote for the Republicans. If you want to vote for those that hate America, vote for the Democrats. It's that easy today. If you have a D by your name, you are associated with a party that hates America. If you have an R, you're associated with a party that either is weak, but at least love America more, or you're a part of the MAGA movement that's actually strong enough to try to bring us back to America's founding principles. You got one leader that doesn't want every other country to rip us off, and you got others that say, no, just let them do it. It's that simple. That's what we are voting on. Now, and all of that, don't worry if you're in New York City. I haven't been able to chance to keep up with the polling that's going on. I don't know if it's very up to date right now. But in New York City, don't worry. Don't worry. You don't have to worry about SNAP benefits. Okay. You don't have to worry about the authorities or any of that. Well, really you do, but don't worry, because the New York mayor, who could potentially become the New York mayor, Zohran Mamdani, the Islamist that is also somehow a socialist Marxist. Well, don't worry. You don't need SNAP benefits, because he's going to give you groceries at a low rate, because he's going to do price controls like the Soviet Union tried to do. And he's also going to have government grocery stores. And don't worry, they'll take care of you. You don't have to pay for it unless you're paying taxes. Then you do. And especially if you're corporations that are paying taxes, because he wants to tax you to death. And he thinks that you're not going to flee down to Florida. And he doesn't think that the hardworking Americans that need jobs from those capitalists are going to just be able to be okay. And they're not going to, what's going to happen? They're going to need more SNAP benefits when the corporate people leave, when their businesses leave. And then the people that are working for them to try to provide a living for their family, oh yeah, they're going to need SNAP benefits. And you know why? Because it's going to cost billions of dollars for that free bus service and those free or low-cost groceries and those price controls. So vote for Zohran Mamdani and everything's going to be okay. And what is wrong with you, New York City? Do you not remember 9/11? Or is it the problem is illegal infiltration without assimilation? Because the predominant majority of people that is voting for Mamdani are the ones that were born in other countries that came here and never assimilated into the American way. They're bringing in their ideologies and they're not converting into the American way. And by the way, the U.S. Constitution was established so that they would protect our nation from this from happening. The federal government was to ensure that there would be nationalization, meaning that we would protect the very principles of the United States of America. And so the predominant majority of people that are voting for Zohran Mamdani are those that fled from other countries that never assimilated to the very principles of America. That's why they want to infiltrate our system. So you get more Mamdanis, because without that, Mamdani doesn't have a chance. Mamdani would never win as mayor of New York City if it wasn't for migration without assimilation. Now, there was somebody in the comment section that attempted to justify the infiltration without assimilation by taking my Faith and Freedom edition on all men are created equal to say we should not have borders. That was what they were implying, that we should not have borders because all men are created equal. And so there should not be a dichotomy between the American citizens and those fleeing into our country. Because if we really believe in the founding documents that all men are created equal, the Declaration of Independence, then we should not, we should have open borders in that. That is radically not what our founders believed in. Now, our founders wrote the Declaration of Independence because they did believe that there's these universal principles of truth, that all men are created equal and should have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that governments are to protect those rights. However, they were not about trying to bring this to everybody in the world. As a matter of fact, at the same time, those that were in Haiti, the very founders of our nation believed that there was no way at best, them and ones in Africa, and that at best they could have military despotism. They did not believe that they were capable of having a free republic. They felt bad for them. They believed that some of them deserved the right to have that, but they were not about just bringing everybody into our nation so that they can have what we have. And they were not about trying to spread democracy in all the world like the George Bushes and all of that. They didn't believe in those things. They believed that even though these are universal truths, that all men are created equal and they have certain inalienable rights endowed to them by our Creator God, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, they also believed that it was the responsibility of the people to make that happen inside of their nations. And they believed that the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution was a social compact that was for our people and our nation. And if they wanted that, then they should spread that in their nations. So for the person that laid that in the comment section, you radically don't know what you talk about. But thank you for leaving a comment. God bless you. Thank you for tuning in. I love you, my friend. I'm praying for the well-being of you and your family, even though you're wrong. But thanks for tuning in. And so our founders had a proper balance of these things. And so this infiltration without assimilation idea is what allows the Mamdanis to rise. Now, for the first time ever, New York City may have a mayor that is an open Marxist and an open Islamist. Now he'll try to backpedal on that, of course, but he's an open Islamist and Marxist. And so don't worry, Mamdani is going to give you everything free, and it's not going to cost New York anything. Now, I'll say some desired Curtis Sliwa to drop out in order for Andrew Cuomo to win. Now, I understand why, and I understand that Andrew Cuomo is the lesser of two evils. I get that. I totally agree with that. I don't agree with some of my friends on the conservative right. I do not think Curtis Sliwa should just drop out. I believe he's right when he says we are the fighters. He says, I'm a Republican, Andrew Cuomo's an independent, and Mamdani's a Democrat. We are the party of fighters, and we don't quit. And if we lose, we just keep fighting until we win. And so what he's saying is, I'm not going to drop out so some independent person that's bad for the city wins. He says, if New York's going to vote for Mamdani, then New York's going to vote for Mamdani. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep fighting. We're going to come back and we're going to keep fighting until we win. I don't oppose that. And so, yes, I would rather see Andrew Cuomo over Mamdani, I think, but they're really both bad. Now, my hope is that Mamdani gets in there with all this wish list of all types of radical, insane things and just can't make it happen. That happens a lot with the Democrats. Barack Hussein Obama was a great example of that. If he would have got his wish list, it would have tanked our whole nation, but he couldn't. So I'm hoping and praying in New York that Mamdani doesn't get his wish list. But honestly, Curtis Sliwa should be winning this election. And so I'm not really sure where the elections are at right now. I don't have it popped up. I wanted to pop it up, but I was kind of racing to try to get in here on time. And I realized I sit at a desk too much because I was too much out of breath just trying to get to the microphone in time to get to you. However, that's all the time we have for today. Tune in tomorrow and the rest of the week because we will be talking about Trump's remodeling of the White House. I haven't had a good chance to talk about it and how it isn't the first time this has ever happened, why I support it. And I'll talk about the leftist lies all about it. You know, Calamity Connie Harris was worried about this so much that Trump is starving babies while he's remodeling the White House. I'm going to expose how these are just one lies, sensationalism after other sensationalism. And I do need to slam down on Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and Nick Fuentes for a little bit this week. I need to show you how Jihadi Candy Owens and Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes is trying to divide the Republican Party and trying to divide MAGA and trying to create American isolationism and trying to spread anti-Israel ideology. And the Republican side of the aisle need to reject it. They need to reject it. And Tucker Carlson just came out because he just recently said, I hate, this is his words, I hate Christian Zionists more than anybody because he believes it's blasphemy of Jesus Christ and the Word of God. I guess he never read Romans chapter 9 and Romans chapter 11 very well. So he said, I hate them more than anybody else. Well, I guess he took enough heat for that. And then he just recently came out and he said, I'm sorry, I got caught up in that. And he said, I despise, which no, he didn't say I despise. He said, I hate. And so he backpedaled on that. I'm sure that'd be for a week. Look, if people are genuinely repented and there's golly sorrow there. I'm one of the most merciful people you'll ever meet. I will not hold your past over your head, but I also will not be played by manipulators. I hope it's genuine. I don't believe it is. I believe he'll be right back next week with his anti-Israel ideology. And if he doesn't want to say it, then he's going to invite other people to say it. And he won't hard push on them because he wants to say it, but he'll let them say it instead. And then he'll act like he's just an honest journalist. No, he's not. There's a grift, there's a game, there's an intention, there's an anti-Israel ideology that's tucked in there. And there's an American isolationist ideology that's tucked in there, and we must not be fooled by it. It's trickery. It's just as much trickery as the radical left. America, I love you. Thank you for tuning in tonight. I want to say our subscriber base is continually going up. So for those that are new subscribers, thank you so much. God bless you. Hey, if you want to help us out, why don't you hit that subscribe button if you're tuning in and you're not subscribed yet? Why don't you hit that notification bell? Why don't you share us with somebody else? Leave us a comment. Tell others about the Revealed Radio Network. We want to defend the Bible, defend Jesus Christ. We want to defend the founding principles of America. Why don't you help spread this far and wide? Also, if you have not purchased the book, The Final Flame, and you like novel mystery thrillers that's packed with truth, also packed with godly principles inside of there, then why don't you consider purchasing The Final Flame? You can find it on Amazon, The Final Flame by John R. Wilson III, your favorite podcast host. Or you can email us at revealedpublications@gmail.com, and we can give you the details on how you can get a signed copy. In the month of November is coming 3 more books, The Revealed Kids Bedtime Stories, A Living Sacrifice, God's Blueprint for Real Revival, and Blessed and Broke, How America lost God and gained debt, and how we can be restored. In the month of December, we plan to release A Landmass Beast, tracing the path to how we got here and where we are headed. Thank you, America. It's close to 7:30, if not 7:30. And 7:30 tonight is The Firm Foundation with Austin Skinner. So if you like good biblical content that's going to help you, help your marriage, help your family, help your walk with God, tune in at 7:30 p.m. for The Firm Foundation with Austin Skinner. America, I love you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for fresh subscribers that are coming in. The book sales are going up. We are so appreciative of your support. Now we know the church will be standing tomorrow. Jesus said, upon this rock I have built my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. But if the republic hasn't totally been burned down by tomorrow, I'll see you tomorrow, America. God bless you. Have a great night.